Prv Neos, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. So we just fixed this bike, Road Glide. It came in, the bike was loud, bunch of PRV speakers, bike was loud, but it had almost no bass. And the wiring was terrible. It was aluminum, copper-clad aluminum wiring. They cut stuff that didn't have to cut. But I'm gonna show you some of the mistakes that were made, what we did to fix it. Hopefully it'll save you guys some time and money. You don't run into this situation. So we actually ended up putting less speakers on the bike than it came in with. And the bike's louder, cleaner, sounds better. One of the reasons we were able to do that is since they weren't using the right size wire, the amplifiers weren't doing full power. So if you have, this bike was over 3,000 watts worth of face value amplifier power. With the way the wiring was ran, he's probably getting half that. So then with the same amplifiers, we didn't sell many amplifiers, we just rewired it. Now that we upgraded the power and the ground and the current flow, so now he's getting closer to the face value, because on a lot of these bikes, you're never gonna make full power, but that's for another video. So we upgraded the power, upgraded the ground, ran full runs, upgraded the ground at the battery, improved everything. And then the speaker wire, we upgraded to oxygen-free copper, so it's flowing more current. So the bike came in with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 speakers, and it left out with 6 speakers, and it was louder, cleaner, way more bass. It actually came in with subwoofers. We downgraded them to mid-bass drivers. What people don't understand is really hard to run a subwoofer in a stock saddlebag. I don't care if it's an extended bag, I don't care. Subwoofers in a stock saddlebag do not work really well. And if you do it, you have to fiberglass the inside of the bag, brace the hell out of it, and run big power. 1600 watt on a set of subwoofers in a stock saddlebag. It's not gonna do much. It's not my opinion, it's the numbers, and we proved it on this bike. So let's go over some of the mistakes. Everybody knows I don't like these lids. These are the double 6x9 lids. These are the Avant Black, I believe, double 6x9 lids. The reason I don't like these lids is, there's a couple of reasons. A, water comes in. There's a giant gap along the top. B, it drops down the 6x9, so you have a 6x9 here, 6x9 here. Then they're actually fighting for airspace in the top because there's no chamber to divide them, and they're leaking air all the way through. So it's just not a good situation. Customer decided to use 6.5s instead of 6x9s, wooden rings, so that's not waterproof. Then he pushed the 6.5 up so that the lid would close. So I would much rather have a single 6.5 working with this airspace since the bag is sealed off, instead of fighting with 2 different drivers that are not chambered off. So you lose a ton of output because these 2 speakers are fighting each other up here in this airspace. And then there's all kinds of leaks and separations. You have leaks along here, so it's not a true enclosure. So it's basically, all this is playing free air. There's all kinds of rattles, and then in order to make it close, he had to modify here, he had to modify here, just to get the lids to close. Then another problem is, if you notice, he used the removable topper, and then he sealed it in to make it non-removable. The reason he did that is he went with an inside mount ring. That way it would be lower down to allow the lids to close. So now the woofer cannot be removed from the outside, it has to be removed from the inside. So this is just bad, all kinds of bad decisions. And the port is way too small. That's a 2.5 inch port for a 10-inch subwoofer. It's never gonna work. So this is what we were up against. We couldn't even repair it, so we just ordered a new set of bags and started over. So we went with Cicada 10-inch mid-bass drivers on an outside mount ring, sealed the top of the bag off, and then did a 6x9 cutting kit with the PRV 6.5 on a 6x9 to 6.5 adapter. Came out way cleaner. Here's the beginning of the fiberglass work in the bag. Here's our 6x9 to 6.5 adapters getting mocked up. Now, before somebody turns my words around and says that Carlos said that mid-bass drivers make more bass than subwoofers, that's not what I said. I said in a stock Harley saddlebag, subwoofers do not have enough airspace to be able to do a good job. Then, because of the impedance rise of the enclosure being so small, your 3,000 watt amp ends up doing more around 1,000 or 1,500 watts. So in this application, A mid-bass driver with a higher sensitivity and the fact that it likes to work in a small amount of airspace is probably going to be a better decision, and your amplifier power will be more usable. So you don't have to take my word for it. Take a stock saddlebag that has a 10-inch subwoofer in it, swap it out for a mid-bass driver. I guarantee you mid-bass driver plays louder. And it's not because the mid-bass driver is better, it's because A, it's going to have a lower impedance because it likes the airspace in the saddlebag and the subwoofer doesn't. And B, being that it's a mid-bass driver, it's going to have a higher sensitivity, which means it will play louder with less power. So back to this. So now his new saddlebags are serviceable. You don't have to worry about water leaking in because the regular lid cutting kit with a 6.5 on a 6-mine adapter. The lid opens and closes no problem, doesn't hit. The bags have a solid topper, not a removable topper. The woofer comes out from the outside of the bag, not the inside of the bag. It's been fiberglass, braced, and reinforced. So now it's more rideable. It weighs less than this setup. There's no wood used in this setup, and the bike sounds a lot better. Check it out. Since we had a ton of channels available, because remember, there's 3 400.4s on this bike, we use one 400.4. We use 2 of those channels to run the horns in the front. We use the second 400.4 bridge to run the 6.5s in the fairings. We use the third 400.4 bridge to run the 6.5s in the lids. And then we use the 1600.1, which is also mounted in the fairing, to power the 10-inch mid-bass drivers. We added a doobie bass knob, so now you can see if it's clipping and back it down, has full control of the mid-bass driver from the front. Build came out amazing. The wiring rescue came out amazing. This bike sounds really, really, really good. And the most important part, it is serviceable now. Now you can remove speakers without cutting glue. The bike came out really, really good. Thank you for the client for trusting us. Hope he enjoys this build as much we had fixing it for him. This Road Glide came in for a tune, ended up staying for a wiring rescue. This one's pretty bad. Check this out. A bunch of mistakes on this one. Okay, so this amplifier has 3 400-watt amps and 1 1600-watt amp. This is their distribution for the ground, but if you notice, there's no thick wire coming to the post. And then the thickest wire here is actually going to the 1600.1, so that means 1 or 2 of these are the feed from the battery. This is 8-gauge aluminum. These are 14 gauge or 10 gauge aluminum as well. The power distribution is even worse. No fuses here, by the way. So they use the same size terminal block for low current remote that they do for high current power and ground. All the amplifiers are held in with zip ties. Dollar store RCA cables. When you lift the radio out, that's a 1600-watt amp. They're using 8-gauge aluminum when the amp takes 4-gauge oxygen-free copper. So obviously this thing's not making any bass. All right, we gotta fix it. So we have 3,000 watts RMS in the fairing, and look at this. 1 8-gauge aluminum wire, so technically it's 16 gauge, and what size fuse is that? So we're pulling like 300 amps of current through a 125 amp fuse, and as you can see, the fuse was just about to let go. It has 1 strand left. Look at that. See how it's all chewed up in the center? We caught it just in time. Can't make this stuff up, folks. They really ran that wire to run all these amplifiers. So there's 3 of these and the 1600 that's under here. So I don't know if they got the customer's permission to do this, but in order to put this fancy plug in that they ran cheap wire into, they notched out the side cover. Oof. That's not good. And they took all this time with all this cheap wire that's going in the garbage. Okay, so we have our new power runs. So we have 8-gauge oxygen-free copper power and ground for 1 400, for a second 400, for a third 400, and here's our 4-gauge oxygen-free copper and ground for our 1600.1. Everything's been cleaned up. Going down the backbone, and everything's going to exit out to this side. This is where we're going to put our fuse distribution block, and we're going to do a 0 gauge run from the battery to the fuse distribution block. Okay, I don't think wood's a good idea inside something gets wet.
Hoy te he visto muy bonita caminando con tu carita de coqueta, dame duro, ay, ay, ay. Y sonríes porque sabes caminarme, el corazón se me inquieta, dame duro, ay, ay, ay. La cumbia, el fuego, candela, I'm a sharpshooter, I'm a sniper, the world's been mad while y'all been in diapers. Estamos muertos hace rato, WhatsApp sin el retrato, no guarda mi contacto, pero se la saco, dos tragos y sabes que me pongo bellaco. No somos nada, pero estamos envueltos hace rato. WhatsApp sin el retrato, no guarda mi contacto. Todo underwater, baby, vamos pa'l cuarto quarter. En la Uru comiéndonos al pare. Te voy a dar duro pa' que no me compare. Ay, cuido con esa mano dura, todo el mundo lo asegura. Que la nota le suba pa' que mueva su cintura. Sabe que está bien dura, todo el mundo lo asegura. Ella quiere que la nota se le suba porque dice que es libre como Venezuela y Cuba. Te conozco, ya yo te he visto desnuda. Nos perdemos como en el triángulo de la Bermuda. Tu boca tiene veneno, veneno, porque cuando tú me besas yo me muero. Tu boca tiene veneno, veneno, porque cuando tú me besas yo me muero. Dame un beso y mátame, con tus labios mátame, con tu boca mátame. Ay, dale que me estoy muriendo. Dame un beso y mátame. the city of LA. There's a place where the player plays.